Hey, do you guys remember Splatoon 2? That game was fun, right? You know, the game with the quad shooter meta, stingray, missile spam... On second thought, I don't miss that game too much. But one thing that was left behind in that game was this gear ability called Main Power Up, or MPU for short. For those who never played Splatoon 2, MPU improved your main weapon in some way. How so? Well, that varies from weapon to weapon. It was honestly really cool seeing what it did to your favorite weapons, until you get to the point where it just gives weapons extra damage. So many weapons made their entire gear builds into it in order to get that fabled 99.9 damage, making it generally take one less shot to kill. This ruined MPU's reputation, which is why it didn't return in Splatoon 3. But what if it did? What if instead of removing it, we reworked it to be more healthy and also more interesting? In this video, we'll be doing exactly that, but we're also going to be looking at sub power up and special power up. Both of these abilities do the same thing, but for subs and specials respectively. And even though they're still present in Splatoon 3, I'm personally not very impressed with their implementation. So they get to hop along for the ride. Without further ado, subscribe if you enjoy, and let's begin. Before going over individual weapon changes, I want to go over the big one that will cover all three abilities. Instead of being stackable like they've always been, they will now be main exclusives. There's a few reasons why I chose to make them like this. First off, this means that you no longer need to dedicate a significant amount of your gear build for this ability. This also means the abilities won't be overtuned by stacking, allowing them to be balanced a lot easier. Second, it gives freedom for them to be more unique and interesting, but it would still come off at the trade-off of not having more exclusives. Specifically, Main Power Up will be a shirt exclusive ability, Sub Power Up will be a headgear exclusive ability, and Special Power Up will be a shoe exclusive ability. Sub Power Up being a headgear ability means that you cannot stack it with last ditch effort, so now you have a choice between an enhanced sub or more frequent subs. This is very important for a certain sub. Special Power Up being a shoe exclusive allows the effects to be more pronounced, since Stealth Jump and other shoe exclusives are among the best in the game. So you would need the special buff to be big in order to make it a worthy trade-off. Not to mention, there's special weapons. It would be kinda disappointing if they weren't big. And for Main Power Up, it's a lot less of a trade-off if it's a shared exclusive ability, but I think buffing your main weapon is a little bit more interesting than subs and specials, so I would like that to be more common, unless you run like E-Leader or something. We'll be going through subs first, then specials, then main weapons sorted by weapon class. There will be timestamps in the description and pinned comment for each category. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the individual changes. Starting out with the subs, first we got Splat Bomb. The extra throwing range is already neat, so we're keeping a little bit of that, around 2 subs. But the more interesting change is this. If the bomb ever hits any surface, be a floor, a wall, whatever, the detonation timer will start, and it will not stop even if it goes airborne. This means that it can explode faster when it hits the ground, or even explode in midair. And you can kinda use it similarly how you use Torpedo in Splatoon 2 with Cancer Rapid. However, the explosion timer will be 1/3 of a second longer overall, since this is a pretty strong trait. Suction Bomb was a bit of a struggle to figure something out. But then during a game I got splattered by a Suction Bomb I didn't see, so I thought, hey, why not go further into that? Suction Bombs will be noticeably smaller, therefore harder to see behind obstacles. But the hitbox will be the same. The bomb will, however, be a little bit louder to compensate. This way, it's a little harder to see, but a little easier to hear. Burst Bomb didn't seem to have a lot to work with, so I came up with something simple. The travel velocity of the bomb will be a little bit faster, making combos easier. It'll be a tiny bit faster than the already existing SPU effect, but honestly, I kinda ran out of ideas with this one. Most other stuff will make it either too overtuned or would not be enough. Sprinkler's retreading some stuff I said during a few videos in the past, and this won't be the last one we see that. Sprinkler's weakest mode will now be removed entirely. It'll now start on the medium stage, then go into its strongest stage and remain on that until it's destroyed. This encourages players to place Sprinkler in trickier spots to reach, so that way they stay alive for longer. But this does make them less effective when placed in an easy to reach spot or if you're about to die, so it is a bit of a trade-off. This one might be a bit evil, but it's the only thing that made sense to me for this. Splash will be very slightly wider, covering just a tiny bit more area. But its total HP will be slightly lower to compensate, since this might be a bit too strong. It gives a better ability to cover choke points though, just mind-moving obstacles. Fizz's effect is a little interesting to me. In the recent 9.2.0 patch, Fizz's bounces were adjusted to be closer together. While this allowed it to hold one spot better, this nerfed its paint and its ability to chase people by quite a bit. A good change overall, but I think it could be interesting to bring back as an SPU effect. Remember, Sub Power Up is a headgear exclusive ability now, so if you want this, you're not gonna do double Fizzy with LDE. So you get better paint and coverage from each Fizzy, but less of them in a match. I think that would work. Curling Bomb's original effect is so sad. You stack 3 pures of it and it barely goes anywhere further. So, fuck it. 3 pures of the OG effect on top of the new one. I really like this new one though. The more it bounces on walls, the bigger the explosion is. It takes 3 bounces to reach match size, which will match the size of a fully cooked curling bomb. This idea promotes trick shots and will go crazy on some maps. The explosion timer will be delayed by 1/3 of a second to compensate though, since it might be too stupid otherwise. Auto bombs is very simple. It'll have better tracking than before. Instead of doing this weird Tokyo drift thing that it does, it will always go in a straight line towards the target, and it'll run slightly faster towards them. Very helpful in big open spaces, but could get it stuck behind the wall if your opponents know how to abuse it, so be careful. Beacons is also pretty simple, though incredibly obvious. It'll allow a third person to jump to a beacon, so all 3 of your teammates can jump to it at separate times before it breaks. Plus, they're still a little speedy, so they're always nice to jump to. Point sensors is another retread. Marked opponents will now show the exact main weapon over their heads, and also over their map icons. It just makes too much sense to not implement, you know? Ink mines will have a similar effect to beacon. They will allow you to place 3 mines at a time. Do keep in mind that the original effect makes it harder to place mines close to each other, so adding that on will make a bit of a more spread out minefield than you would expect. But it will still be nice to trap 3 locations at once. Toxic Mist will have an effect that a lot of people have been wanting for a while. Landing a direct hit of Toxic Mist will give opponents its effect for 5 seconds, even if they live the Mist Cloud. Rewards good aim for the user, and allows the sub to be used more aggressively instead of just to hold an area. One more retread for the subs, Angle Shooter. Say it with me, the line trail does 20 damage. We've been over this before, insert talk about how it does damage in single player, yada yada yada. And for the last sub, we got Torpedo. Simple effect here, we're making it more durable by doubling its HP. Sounds like a lot, until you remember that it only has 20 HP, and 40 HP still isn't a lot. But it is enough to survive at least 1 hit from most things, so it'll take just a tiny bit more effort to take down from most weapons. Now that the subs are out of the way, let's go over the specials. Starting out with everyone's pain in the ass, Traisuka. We're bringing back a property from Splatoon 1 and allowing you to use your subs while holding it. Squeezer can deploy a wall for protection, Carbon can move with burst bombs, Shock can poke with suctions, and so on. It's one of the less crazy effects here, but it'll be nice. For Bubble, its durability is already pretty ridiculous, let's not make it more so. Let's go in a different, more interesting direction. You see the beacon in the bubble? Once the bubble breaks, the beacon will remain on stage for about 6 more seconds. It is completely indestructible for those 6 seconds, and it still hides your jump. This rewards tricky bubble placements, since you could either get an easy flank or distract the opponent from the main objective by looking at this beacon. Or both, potentially. Zipcaster's still one of the coolest specials in the game, and this change will make it even cooler. Zipping through the air will now be around 15% faster. Not only is this obviously good for catching people by surprise, but it also means you might be able to zip 1 extra time before it runs out. Can't imagine how good Stamper will be with this. For Missile, I really didn't want to buff any attributes of it, and I was out of ideas. So we're going with an old rework idea. It'll work like Splatoon 1 Ink Strike. You choose an area on the map and shoot 10 missiles on that area. However, you can instead choose to target any opponent, but you won't get info on when they are until after you shoot. So you can try to aim at the backline that you can already see to push them out, or try to figure out where that pesky Carbon is hiding, but you can't do both. Or you could just shoot at the zone, but the missiles will be spread out enough that it's very easy to counter zone's cheese. I don't mind current missiles, but any buff in the wrong direction could definitely send it to be overtuned again, so I wanted to go for the rework approach instead, and this is the only real rework. I really like this one for Inkstorm. Occasionally, there will be lightning bolts within the storm that will deal 30 damage per hit. This means that staying in an enemy storm will actually be a little more dangerous, since a 30 damage hit could just end you at any moment. The bolts also paint a little bit, but it's nothing too spectacular. This will also stack with a little bit of the original effect, which if you didn't know, it makes the Inkstorm last longer, but its paint is slightly worse. But the lightning bolt should compensate for that slightly worse paint. Booyah was a bit of a struggle to come up with something. It was the very last thing to have an idea for, but this one's pretty cool. Every Booyah that comes from a teammate, not the user, will make the final explosion slightly bigger. And I do mean slightly. This does have a cap to it, so it's still optimal for the user to Booyah alongside teammates. However, if that cap is reached, the Booyah bomb will gain Inkstorm's healing effect. This incentivizes players to throw the Booyah near teammates in a fight to potentially help them out of it. I'm not sure on the exact scaling on how many Booyahs you will need to get to the mats, since latency might make that seem a little weird. I just wanted to get the idea out, because I think it's really cool. Wave Breaker is pretty simple. Just throw out 2 more waves at the end. They'll be big waves too, so so hiding 5 ways behind the corner would be pretty cool. For ink vac, we're back to recycling old content. If the vac is 40% charge, you can press R to cancel the charge according to shooting mode. But it takes 45 frames or 3/4 of a second to get the shot out. Please just put this in the game already, I beg. Killer wall's a bit of a dangerous one, but it's chaotic in a way that will be really funny. Once the wall reaches its target location, regardless of hitting the opponent, it will ricochet off the next wall it hits once. This does mean that opponents behind them that are also behind the wall are not going to be affected by the well, but the target now has more lasers to worry about. To balance this out though, its damage will be reduced by about 10%, so it won't be as deadly. Inkjets is a pretty obvious one. Pressing R will allow you to do a dash in any direction, forward, backwards, sideways, just not up or down. The dash has a 1-second cooldown between uses. Pretty simple stuff. It's nice to have a mobility tool that's partially inspired by the rocket Outtro from story mode and makes Inkjet less of a sitting duck. Or would it be a flying duck? Whatever. Ultra Stamps is pretty funny. You would swing 2 hammers at once, alternating stamping time. This gets a fair bit more coverage, makes it harder to shoot down, and if you ever choose to throw a hammer, you still have one left. It does become a regular Ultra Stamp after throwing though. Crab tanks will be really interesting. Looking more into the ball form protection, that form will have increased defense by a lot. It'll be enough to survive a reach slider indirectly, but only barely. Any big hits after that, like a bomb, are likely to break it. Being able to survive a big hit is such a big deal, but it does mean you have to stop shooting for a moment to keep your crab active. But in some situations, it may just be worth it. Speaking of reach slider, we're pairing an obvious change with a cooler benefit. At any point during the reach slider, you can press B to eject from it. It'll super jump back to your starting point and would have a visible recoil similar to Inkjet and Zipcaster. If you're worried about your recoil being capped, just don't press B and it'll do a normal reach slider. The actual power level of reach slider is fine right now, so adding more mid-up options will be needed. Triple Ink Strike will have a change that people have been asking about since the start of the game, which is allowing you to swim with the strikes in hand. This allows easier repositioning, and it's nothing too crazy, but I just don't think this special deserves nice things. For cooler, I went with something that rewards playing well. When you're under the cooler effects, any splat you get will extend the effect for 3 seconds. Only splats work. Assists don't count. The effect stacks if you get multi-splats, but goes away if you ever get splatted yourself, regardless of how much you had saved. This rewards aggressive play, but doesn't stick around if you play too reckless. Perfect for this kind of special. This might be my favorite change in the whole video, but for super chumps, you're allowed to super jump alongside the chumps. Around the moment of launch, the user and the teammates will be able to jump into the cannon and get launched alongside the super chumps. The landing spot will be somewhere within the inner circle of the chumps. This would allow players to just go in with the chumps. If out of bounds is a concern, maybe it could have a recoil that lets you back after a few seconds. I just think that leaning more into the idea of the fake jump markers and having a real one among them would be so cool. And you could always just go away from the cannon to not super jump. Kraken is another one reverting a nerf, though this was from a long time ago. When this special was introduced, there was a bug that allowed it to cancel its end lag with a squid roll. You couldn't shoot right away, you just mixed up your movement. That was a cool piece of tech that's now lost to time, and I think it's unfortunate. So we're bringing that back, and we're also allowing the dash attack to be cancelled this way. This makes both the dash attack and the end lag a lot less committal, which allows you to extend a little bit further because you can pull back it out easier. Feels just like melee. Triple splash downs is pretty obvious. Super jump splash will now make the fists actually spawn, though the radius will be decreased by 20%. Fairly simple. Splatter color screens effect will be more team favored. If anyone in your team walks through it, they'll be getting a ninja squid effect for 3 seconds. Just the harder to see trail, not the slowdown. Really allows players to be even sneakier with it, and will be especially powerful for foil flings players. You can only get the effect once per screen though, and it doesn't stack. Okay, I've made you all wait long enough. It's time to talk about what you're really here for, MPU. For most weapon classes, I grouped a lot of effects together. There was no way I was going to give every individual weapon a unique effect. Some of these are also recycled / inspired by what they did in Splatoon 2, with the caveat of having a set amount instead of being stackable. Beginning with the shooters, let's get this big group out of the way first. Splash, Shot, 52, Sat, Pro, 96, Jet, L3, H3, and Squeezer will all get a slight shot velocity increase. It's very slight, but should help in fights a lot. The range values will not be affected by this. Now for a smaller group, that being Junior and Aerospray. I'll be giving these ultimate spray shooters a significant change in playstyle. A lot of people really like actually playing aggressive with these two weapons, so this is for you. The reticle while standing on the ground will be narrower by a significant margin, around 15%. It does make the weapons less paint focused, but it allows them to actually get in your face and fight you if they're smart about it. It probably wouldn't be optimal, but it'll be a fun playstyle. Sploosh wasn't lumped into that group because it already wants to get in your face and splat you fast. So instead, we feel more into that. Upon splatting someone, it will give you around 2 mains of run and swing speed for about 3 seconds. And it stacks too, so getting a quad will give you up to 12 seconds. Similar to the effect given to Tactical earlier, only splats work, no assists. And you lose the effect if you ever get splatted. Making the fastest weapon in the game even faster will be really funny, but it also makes people less likely to just run around and avoid fights, and they'll actually be aggressive. Last shooter in the list, and some could argue it could have put it with spray shooters, but I had a different idea for Nova. This is probably the most drastic change here, but we're going to increase the fire rate a bit so it matches NSAP. Big change, I know, but we didn't adjust the ink consumption to compensate, so there will be a lot more time spent going to your ink to recharge, and it's still 24 damage bullets after all. Hopefully this isn't overtuned. Next weapon class is the rollers, and if you suffered with this class for the last 10 years like I have, Jesus Christ, you already know what I'm gonna give them. Every single one of them will have decreased damage fall off and reflex. That allows them all to splat players from a little further away, or do 70 damage per big swing. On top of that, the hitbox for the maximum damage will be slightly wider, like very slightly, which should help ease some inconsistencies with the class just for being off by a little bit. Going to the chargers, the first 3 are the same idea, but different scaling. For Squiffer, Splat Charger, and E-Leader, they'll get a returning effect. They'll all get a slight range increase. Squiffer and E-Leader actually had this as their MPU effect in Splatoon 2, but this is new to Splat Charger. However, in Splatoon 2, this also gives them a slightly wider paint trail, which will not be carried over here. For the exact scaling, it's really hard to pinpoint the hard numbers, but I want to say that Squiffers will be the most notable of the 3, and E-Leader will be the least notable of the 3. For Bamboo, sometimes you just want a quick escape route. If you have MPU, uncharged shots will make a proper connected trail, but the trail will be skinnier than it is on a full charge. Just enough to swim through it, but you can't just paint the sun like crazy with it. I really struggled picking something for Bamboo that wouldn't break it, and this was the best I got, so I'm open to ideas on this one. Good Tour gets a lot of benefits here, but honestly, it needs them. Its charge time will be decreased by 20%, which is already a lot, but it will also allow you to throw subs without depleting a charge. Honestly, both of these should be in the base game already, but we can tack them on like this for now. And for Pencil, some of you all might hate me for this one, but hear me out. Normally, Pencil on a full charge is allowed to shoot 5 times. But what if we had a 6 shot? Before you go in the comments, there's drawbacks to this. The paint trail will be significantly thinner, to the point where all 6 shots will paint roughly the same as the original 5. And the ink consumption is not mitigated around it, so the weapon will become significantly more ink hungry, giving it more downtime. So even if this could be a bit annoying, I think it will be balanced out by these drawbacks that it will be fine. You're essentially taking more combat utility per burst in exchange for having more downtime. I think that's a fair trade-off. Jumping into the blasters, we start with another returning effect. Luna's MPU effect in Splatoon 2 increased the high damage radius of explosions. Or in other words, indirects had an easier time doing 70 damage. So, we're bringing that back, but also giving it to V-Blaster, Range Blaster, and S-Blast. S-Blast definitely benefits the most out of this due to its long range indirects being tiny, and also having burst bomb combos, but all of the rest will be easier to hit as well. For World Rapids, they'll get the same effect that we just went over. You might be wondering how that's possible since they do 30 damage no matter where you hit. Well, the whole explosion will be slightly bigger. Very slightly though. Allows hitting behind corners a lot better and makes direct plus indirect combo a lot more reliable. Last blaster, the Clash Blaster. It's already the fastest blaster by a landslide, so I wanted to feel into it a bit more. NPU will make its setup and end lag significantly reduced. The fire rate is unchanged, but you can go in and out of squid form and do other movement options a lot faster. Additionally, it'll get the same fast acceleration Sploosh has. It's still not gonna be super strong, but at least you can play more evasive and play chip damage with the AoE without putting itself at too much risk. Brushes are a bit of a complicated topic, since I think all brushes should have the perma ink rest effect, but it didn't feel right having ink brush get it by default and giving it to the rest with MPU. So we'll put a different approach for all of them. For ink brush, it's the same effect as Splatoon 2, that being faster rolling speed. It wouldn't be that much, but it's already pretty fast, so it would add up really quickly. Outtro will take a page from the rollers here, and it will decrease the damage fall off on the flex. It wouldn't be as extreme as those guys, but it will still be enough to be noticeable. And for Paintbrush, it's pretty clear what needs to be targeted. The windup will be reduced by quite a bit. I think 5 frames is good? Maybe too much, may not be enough. If machine players know anything, 5 frames can be quite a lot, so I think it's fine. Speaking of sloshers, Almost all of them get different effects. So let's get the shared ones first. Regular Slasher and Splasher will have a slightly bigger headbutt. It's very slight and it's only the damaging headbutt. Paint is unchanged. For Explo, it's only going to apply on the direct hit. The explosion hitbox is also unchanged. This allows a 90 combo to be more reliable without making the explosion a bigger issue. And for regular Slasher, it helps a lot in combat if the enemy moves too fast, or could even help you get multi-splats easier. Tri-Slasher will get a modified version of Splatoon 2 effect. You see these holes in the ink between the 3 slashes? Yeah, we're patching those up. Not only does this help for movement, but it also makes the weapon's paint output pretty reliable, which is especially useful for the Nouveau kit staying competitive. For Slashing Machine, we took inspiration from Grisco's Slasher of all things. Direct hits will now pierce opponents and objects, so you could potentially hit multiple people with 76 damage. However, this needs a drawback. The AoE hitbox will be made slightly smaller to compensate for it. Also, it wouldn't pierce splash balls. That would just be dumb. So it becomes a decision of having more reliable AoE or just having a direct that does more damage to more people. The classic power versus versatility dynamic. I had something planned out for Blob, but thought of a new idea while scripting. When the bubbles hit a wall, they will speed up by 50%. This could really reward going for trick shots, but because they're harder to aim, we can get away with a significantly faster speed boost. Their total range will not be increased. And last for the slashers, we got Threadbringer, and we made it so the second slash will come out a little bit faster. This would allow a 90 damage combo to be easier, but you can still split your shots with a fast camera flick should you want to spread them out for paint or AoE. The end lag wouldn't change, so the overall fire rate wouldn't actually be better. Jumping into the Splatlinks, we have another class-wide effect here, returning from Splatoon 2. All Splatlinks will have an increased firing duration in a burst. It goes up to 1 extra second of firing at max charge, and scales accordingly. And unlike the extra shot of Pencil, this will not make your ink efficiency any worse, it's just straight up a buff. From one class-wide effect to another's, dualies will also all share an effect. Every single dualie will get 1 extra dodge roll, but this one has a bit more end lag than the other rolls. If you don't want the end lag, just stop your roll short. But having the option to do one more roll is very powerful for all of them, but especially for Dowsers and Dapples. Brettles will have a universal effect in the same way that the last 2 weapon classes did, but they're all pretty much in the same ballpark. Splat Brella and Temp will both get HP increases on the shield, with Splat Brella getting 100 HP, making it 600 total, and Temp getting 300 HP, so it reaches 1000 HP. This might seem extreme, but with blasters and swords flying in the wild everywhere, I think it's more than justified. The other two, however, will likely get their shields broken really fast anyway, so an HP buff might not do that much. Instead, let's embrace the broken shields. Undercover and recycled Bretta's shields will now come back 1 second faster after breaking or launching. That way, even though your shield will still break fast, you'll get it back fast enough that it won't be as much of an issue. For recycled specifically, this means that you can spam launch your shield a lot more, and has more incentive to go in with it since you can pull up a second shield while deep in there. Going into Stringers, they'll all have different effects. For Tri-Stringer, the arrows on the ground will explode about 10 frames faster. Makes it a bit more of a trade-off to pick over Wall String. The coverage on this one isn't as good, but the area it does cover will cover a little better. It also makes the 2 arrows into explosion combo a lot more reliable. We will not be giving the same effect to Wall String though. That will be insane. Instead, at half charge, the arrows will be closer together, making one-shots easier to land. I feel like they're a bit too difficult to line up as is, so a little nudge in that direction helps. Top shots and full charges remain unaffected. Reflots ain't beating the Squiffer allegations already, and this is certainly not going to help. It's getting a bit more range, stealing Squiffer's effect. Note that this only applies to fully charged shots. Top shots remain unaffected. I've always been a believer that this is what the weapon needs. Range to be more of a mid lane and be actually scary, so I figured it'll be a nice effect. And finally, we got the swords. The open class that's arguably the best in the game right now, and will be really easy to overtune. For Wiper, charge slash dashes will be about 15% faster. It's already pretty fast, may as well make it even more speedy. This only applies to the dash forward, the actual slash is still the same. Stamper is one I was very hesitant to give anything to, since that weapon already has pretty much everything. Best I could come up with was to slightly, and I do mean slightly, connect the gaps of ink of horizontal slashes, which... sure? It's really hard to give it something else without totally breaking it, so giving it a movement slash escape tool sounded good. Last weapon to talk about, the Cavitator. It already lunges so far during its dash, so I thought, why not make the dash go a little bit more distance? Around 5 to 10% more distance might be good, but keep in mind that you would still dash forward at the same speed. So since you have to cover more distance, it makes the headbutt come out a little bit later, so it is a bit of a trade-off here. That said, Decaf can struggle a bit with range, so it's definitely worth considering. Anyways, that's it for this video. I've been wanting to tackle this topic for a while now, but Jamboree came out and other stuff started happening which made me put it lower on the priority list. But I'm glad to finally have the chance to do it. Are there any effects you feel were too strong or too weak? Any alternate ideas for a different direction this could be taken? Let me know in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed it, thank you all so much for watching, and take care.